It's a charm, buddy.
What's up,
This is
everybody?
actually
This is Conscience. You're listening to the Punk Rock Poetry Podcast. We got Professor Maines here.
what's up, buddy? What's up, my man?
Alan Watts, I do believe you told me that he was a philosopher.
Yeah, so Alan Watts, if you've been kind of interested in Eastern philosophy and religion, you've probably come across him in terms of him talking about things like Buddhism or him talking about things like mindfulness or Taoism. He's probably one of the first people I've ever heard talk about Taoism, and which is a Chinese religion and philosophical system. And yeah, so what I was mentioning to you kind of off camera that's interesting about Alan Watts is that he is a philosopher that a lot of his audio recordings exist. So you'll often see he's kind of had this resurgence with in these inspirational, motivational kind of YouTube videos because he has such an awesome voice, which you'll hear in just a second. This is an example of that right now, right? Where someone's obviously, I think, made an animation to an old piece of one of his lectures.
Right. Now, Alan Watts died in 73, so he's long dead. We were wondering if he was alive, but he is definitely dead. He died in 1973. What if you stop talking to yourself all the time by Alan Watts? Let's do it.
All right, buddy, here we go.
Most of us think compulsively all the time. That is to say, we talk to ourselves. And I remember when I was a boy, we had a common saying, talking to yourself is the first sign of madness. Now, obviously, if I talk all the time, I don't hear what anyone else has to say. And so in exactly the same way, if I think all the time, that is to say, if I talk to myself all the time, I don't have anything to think about except thoughts. And therefore I'm living entirely in the world of symbols, and I'm never in relationship with reality.
Huh.
All right, now that's the first basic reason for meditation. But there is another sense, and this is going to be a little bit more difficult to understand, why we could say that meditation doesn't have a reason.
See why they love his voice, eh?
Or doesn't have
Yeah, it's perfect.
purpose. And in this respect, it's unlike almost all other things that we do, except perhaps making music and dancing. Because when we make music, we don't do it in order to reach a certain point, such as the end of the composition. If that were the purpose of music, to get to the end of the piece, then obviously the fastest players would be the best. And so likewise, when we are dancing, we are not aiming to arrive at a particular place on the floor, as we would be if we were taking a journey. When we dance, the journey itself is the point. When we play music, the playing itself is the point. And exactly the same thing is true in meditation. Meditation is the discovery that the point of life is always arrived at in the immediate moment.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, if you meditate for an ulterior motive, that is to say, to improve your mind, to improve your character, to be more efficient in life, you've got your eye on the future and you are not meditating. Because the future is a concept. It doesn't exist. As the proverb says, tomorrow never comes. There is no such thing as tomorrow. There never will be. Because time is always now. And that's one of the things we discover when we stop talking to ourselves and stop thinking. We find there is only a present, only an eternal now. It's funny then, isn't it, that one meditates for no reason at all, except we could say for the enjoyment of it. And here I would interpose.
Which is one of the things that's so interesting, Wilk, right, is like so much of our mental health issues live in the past or in the future.
Yeah.
Right. Whether we're talking about trauma and negativity from the past, or whether we're talking about anxiety of potential future situations or depression about potential lack of whatever it is, right? Like it's like so much of it is this pulling in opposite directions, where he's kind of making this idea that actually that's a trick of the mind, that we're actually in this ever present, eternal, right now. It's always right
Always
now.
now, forever and now.
And like if I was to tell you like right now is right now, you'd be like, yeah, that's like the most obvious stuff. Like why did you just say that? But it's like weird to think that it's always like that.
It's always that way.
And that tomorrow and yesterday, even though like at a certain level, this is just an interesting way to look at what time is and what our human experience of time is and how that affects our thinking and how we make sense of things, kind of.
Right. Let's do it.
The essential principle that meditation is supposed to be fun. It's not something you do as a grim duty. The trouble with religion as we know it is that it is so mixed up with grim duties. We do it because it's good for you. It's a kind of self-punishment. Well, meditation, when correctly done, has nothing to do with all that. It's a kind of digging the present. It's a kind of grooving with the eternal now, and brings us into a state of peace where we can understand that the point of life, the place where it's at, is simply here and now.
All right, Wilkie. There's a little meditation video for you.
Right on. I can honestly say I don't think I've ever once meditated in my entire life. I think that sometimes when I'm creating music, it's like a form of meditation because I shut off everything in my brain and focus on what I'm doing in that moment. So I think like recording music is kind of like meditation for me, but I don't think I've actually just sat and cleared my mind and stopped thinking by myself with nothing else going on. I don't think I've ever had any, like I've always had external features going on when I'm meditating. Nothing. I've never done it with nothing. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Do you?
No, I don't regularly. I definitely have.
Are you good at it?
No, not really. I don't know if it's, and that's kind of, I think, his point, right? It's not about even being good at it. It's about just like trying
But there is you have to do it properly for it to be considered meditation. That's also the point that he's making.
yeah, the effect is builds, right? So like, just like you get more and more scattered thinking, you can, I don't know. It depends when you ask like, do I meditate? It kind of depends what you mean by meditate. I don't really do the kind of mindfulness meditation that Alan Watts promotes. In martial arts and stuff, it's meditative movement in a way, but there's not you're not focusing on one thing the whole time, or else like
is it meditation when you're focusing on nothing?
So there's two kind of interesting branches in Buddhist meditation, and one is kind of a mind emptying technique and one is a mindful technique, right?
Okay.
So those are kind of two branches of Buddhist meditation.
Okay.
Yeah, good question.
That must have been part of Kung Fu.
That makes sense. Well, yeah, Kung Fu comes from China, and in China the major philosophical and religious traditions would be Buddhism and Taoism and the work of Confucius. So like everything that's comes from ancient China kind of has been influenced by those things.
Confucius was Chinese?
Yep.
I had no idea. What kind of name is Confucius? That's not a very Chinese name, is it? Is that like a nickname?
No. So Confucius, so there's kind of like the three big sages of Chinese philosophical and religious history would be like the Buddha, Lao Tzu, who is the person that his writings and teachings becomes Taoism, and then Confucius and the Analects. Confucius is kind of interesting because he's very much more about kind of practical philosophy. He's kind of like an Aristotle, and Lao Tzu is kind of like Plato, and Buddha's kind of like Socrates. In my one class, I actually make that comparison of like these three kind of giants philosophically in the West and in the East. And in the West, I point to like Plato, Socrates, and Aristotle. In the East, Buddha, Lao Tzu, and Confucius.
Okay.
And it's an interesting, like, we could maybe talk about that one time. It's an interesting, like, 6-person comparison because they actually match up pretty interesting. Like I'll just say this really quick. Like Plato, for example, and Lao Tzu were both much more like kind of metaphysical and interested in like what was reality, all this kind of stuff. Confucius and Aristotle were more practical. Like Aristotle wrote books about like medicine and distinguishing between different species of animals and like and ethics and rhetoric is where we even get that word, that idea, and like of like a proper argument to get to a certain point in a conversation. Yeah, so it was like they had different focuses very much.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
man. All right, brother. Let's see if
Good
this
to know.
worked, man. This worked.
Meditation. Let's see if this
Yeah, man.
video worked.
This was a test to see if we can like double video reaction from Kitchener, Canada to
DC, Canada.
Yeah, man. What's the name of your
Sick.
city again?
Port Alice.
Port Alice, man.
Way up north central on Vancouver Island.
Oh,
Out in the
boy.
woods, out in the bush with the bears and the cougars.
Yeah, man. All right, brother.
Sick.
Have a good night, man.
Subscribe. Hit that notification bell too.
Cheers.
Peace.